This time on Gamers Week podcast, Tomb Raider's Lara Croft is the newest survivor joining the Dead by Daylight roster. With her experiences and skill set, Lara Croft perfectly embodies the characteristics needed to survive in the fog.
Are these her skill set?
Her chesticles?
Yeah, her chesticles.
They could be used as a weapon, right?
I guess they could. If the killer's like right next to you, she turns really quickly and knocks him out.
And I'll be honest with you, this was not the scenario with Lara Croft and hooks I was going for.
There is a dungeon and hooks.
But it could be. It could be.
Hey,
it could be.
I have an amazing imagination. That's all I have to say. I can't make that sound with my voice. I gotta be honest.
You can't do that?
No, I just refuse because my voice is an instrument. Thank you very much.
Oh, so it's not that you can, it's that you won't.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct. I refuse.
He won't sink down to our level. That's what I heard.
Well, the problem is it's just so far to go, you know.
Is it?
Right.
Love you. The thing is, this is going to be the cold open, and nobody knows what you're doing right now. So, for those listening, he is simulating fellatio. If you
even if you're just listening, I'm pretty sure people are like, "I bet that's what he's doing." They can already just picture it.
He's simulating pleasure. Sound like upper class society right there.
Well, he did say he was way above our level, so you know.
He did.
That's probably what he calls it in bed. Darling, could I please have fellatio?
Hey man, he's mimicking giving a blowjob. That's my level. That's my level.
Cousin Lawrence?
Cousin Lawrence is actually who he is, and Donnie is the persona he uses for the podcast.
Oh, it's like Batman.
It would not surprise me.
Yep.
Like Batman, who is who he really is, and Bruce Wayne is the persona.
Right.
Okay.
And this is what you chose for a persona. Are we ready to go live then?
Yep. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 123, and today is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. My name is Blue Williams, and I'll be your host for this evening. But of course, as you can almost see, I am not alone. These continental contortionists and controversial contradictions will surely contaminate the contusions of your heart. Please, everyone, say hello to Ryan Payne, a.k.a. retrogamebrews, and the one and only Donnie G.
I feel like you just use that as an excuse to use the C word, and
I used many C words just then. I don't know what you're talking about.
I was just going to say, like, are you, like, it sounds like you're pronouncing it
Why?
via
How
the
do you
Queen's
say
English.
It? How do you say it?
I'm not going to touch this one, especially not on Twitch. I don't want to get a Twitch ban.
All right, just a quick announcement before we get the show started. There will not be a new episode next week due to the Independence Day holiday, but we will resume regularly scheduled episodes the week after. So let's go ahead and get the show started with our reviews, reactions, and requests. At Given Name Eric says, in the new Street Fighter movie, I want to see them throwing down with the X-Men.
All right.
Ooh, I could get down with that. Yeah.
I think there might be some IP issues there, but we'll see. It's fine. At Derek Logue 2 said, I want to see Mike Tyson playing Balrog.
I do too, but I would have loved to see that back in the late 80s,
Right.
early 90s. Not
Right,
now.
geriatric.
Early 90s Tyson.
Geriatric Balrog now.
No, he's not. I mean, are you kidding me? Did you see him getting ready for his fight with Aaron Paul in July, which is now postponed? But he is not. You call him geriatric? He would still make you a puddle of goo, dude.
But he can't act as well. So good, right?
Yeah, you got a point.
And at Frigid Ninja 78 says, I want to see less cocaine.
Buzzkill.
Do you want a fun movie or not?
That's like the Mario Brothers movie with less scotch. It just doesn't go.
It needed the scotch.
No.
It needed the scotch, 100%. All right, let's move on to our patron shoutouts.
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Dunky Forever, Agil 2020, Ducks in Disguise, Don't Make Me Pull Over This Car, Sir Coffee of Houseblend, first of his name, Hybrid Divide, Matto1606, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, the Red Ox PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Hughes Thanks, number one Blue Sick Voice fan, John Baran, Sassy Sony, Evo Lust, Rai's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retro Man, Gametroid, Moradib, Michael McKite, Emo Is Helldivers 2 Still a Thing-esque, Bill Tucker, The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcakes Pickled Pepper, Ducks with Thick Thighs, Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugnut, Loudmoth, Retro Blast Pat, ENT Zillaguy, The Mad Milkman, Seven Castle Forest, Crunchy Kong, Share Snacks, Frank Grande, and Love Richard BTW. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our bi-weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
I noticed that there's a severe lack of bouncing quackers in our Patreon right now, and I am severely disappointed.
You are correct. Like, it's not there this week. Weird.
Perhaps she had too many people asking how bouncy they were, and it got
That'll do
I
it
just
every
got
time.
used to bouncy quackers.
All right, let's move on to our headlines.
All right, this headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic, family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know, what do you think is the biggest technological leap between gaming console generations? Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. I was struggling with this one.
Yeah,
So
this is
there's-
a tough one because like
It is.
the one that immediately came to mind was the jump to 3D, essentially.
So Super
was the first
Nintendo to N64 PlayStation.
Right, but then I was like, well, the jump from PS1 to PS2 was huge. It was
Right.
absolutely incredible. And then I was thinking, but wait, like the jump from Atari to NES, that was mind-blowing. I can't think of an answer.
In my personal opinion, the jump from Atari to NES wasn't that big of a technological leap because they were still using the kind of the same setup. Mm-hmm. It's just that with the Atari, you know, they were notorious for the whole box art and everything being deceiving.
Right.
Just like you said, you've got the leap from the Super Nintendo to the N64 PlayStation 1. You've got the PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3. And then, like, I still see games that are on the PlayStation 3 that whenever I look at games that are on the PlayStation 4, I'm like, oh, okay, this probably could be on the PS3. So it's not really that big of a leap. But I think for me personally, I would probably say the leap from the Super Nintendo to the PlayStation 1.
And I will say that a lot of it has to do with a few different factors. So I think the first thing that we often think about is the visual piece to it, you know, like what looks different, right? So that jump from Nintendo to Super Nintendo is pretty profound. That jump from obviously Super Nintendo to 3D, pretty profound. I think one of the other pieces to it, though, is how you interacted with the game and the gameplay. So NES, Super NES, it's basically the same controller with a few extra buttons. If we're talking about the jump from Nintendo to PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and the N64, Now you're having to deal with the fact that now it's a 3D environment, so your controller that you're using is completely different. So for me, at least, that's, I think, the biggest technological jump. The only problem is that's also like the biggest, I'll say, experiment time as well for every developer out there that needed to make every game in 3D and killed a bunch of franchises that just shouldn't have been in 3D. So it's like, you take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, that's not the question, though. It's just, what's the technology?
True.
Never mind, they didn't
true.
know how to use it.
Fair enough.
All right, well, let's start off with the week's quick takes. First up, months after Apple opened the App Store to game streaming apps, the iPhone is about to get its first one. Retro gaming platform AntStream will arrive on iOS on June 27. AntStream Arcade offers over 1,300 retro games from old school platforms like Atari consoles, Commodore 64, DOS, and Arcade. It even has a few PS1 games, but its fare is less Metal Gear Solid and more Hogs of War. AntStream typically costs $5 monthly or $40 annually, but Cult of Mac reports that it will launch with an introductory offer of $4 per month or $30 per year. Donnie's already giving a big thumbs down before I even finish reading.
Why?
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Get an emulator. Get all the damn games yourselves.
But what if you're somebody who doesn't want to bother with all that or doesn't know how to do it? This is easier. You have to admit, this is easier. And
Sure.
$4 or $5 a month is not that bad.
You're paying for the convenience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The same for the same amount that you could feed a small child. You could get an emulator on your Apple iPhone for $5 a month.
Sally Struthers approves.
Yeah, this is probably not cheaper than feeding a small child or rescuing a pet or something like that. I don't
Right.
know, I don't do anything on my phone. I don't play games on my phone. If I want to play a game, I'm up here in my office with my video games or downstairs. I've got my handhelds. I don't need that on my phone. Period. So for me, it's not going to happen.
And the thing is, too, it's 1,300 retro games, but they're from the Atari, which maybe that's a good thing for mobile, because often when you're playing mobile games, you're not going to stick around a long time and play for hours unless you're addicted to one. But Commodore 64, DOS, and Arcade, Arcade, cool, but these aren't like the hot titles that you would want to play and that I would be willing to pay $4 a month for to get access to. I think that when you got 1,300 games, a vast majority of them are going to be absolute shit. So,
Of course.
Right.
yay, variety.
Yeah, Atari, Commodore 64, DOS, and Arcade. Those are tough sells. It's not like, because you think about probably what most people want from a retro streaming platform. It's going to be stuff from like NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, that kind of stuff. Going much farther back than that, and the games are so rudimentary that if you weren't alive and playing those at the time, it's real hard, I feel like, to get too into them without those kind of rose-colored nostalgia glasses.
Mm-hmm. And then if you pay the $5 a month, you'll probably cancel after the first month or two.
No, you'll forget about it, and you'll pay for it for 3 years and then go,
That's a good point.
What was all this for?
If you attach it to your credit card, it's out of sight, out of mind. If you're somebody that just pays it off, it's like, oh, it's a low balance. Yeah, whatever. Next thing you know, like 5 years later, you're like, you start like, I'm going to be more fiscally responsible. I'm going to look at like exactly what I've spent each month and what is this chart? Oh my God, this goes back to 6 years? Yeah.
I've paid $300 for something I never even played once and that I could have emulated for free.
Right.
Right. So for $30 a year, the introductory price, I would rather just get Nintendo Switch Online for $20.
I completely agree.
Yep.
Much better curated list.
Yep. And stuff you'll actually play.
Actually.
All right, next up, Embracer Group is making the move to using AI in game development following the company's high-profile layoffs, studio closures, and game cancellations, saying that not using AI will lead to the company lagging behind other major game developers and publishers like EA, Sony, Square Enix, and Ubisoft. Despite concerns that AI will replace human workers, Embracer says it doesn't intend to use it that way. It went so far as to say AI will open doors to entry into the games industry for some developers, including those with disabilities who can't operate certain equipment the same way as non-disabled people. I am not the smartest person, so I need some help understanding how AI is going to help somebody with a physical disability operate software so that they can become the game developer they always dreamed of but couldn't possibly do without AI.
I guess if you're using voice commands and you can't type, AI is going to help you develop things. That would be one thought.
The chip right in the back of your head.
Right
the
there. Yeah. It's connected to the 5G.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to go any further into that.
Best not
Moving
to.
Right.
along.
TCat85 says, do you have a placeholder for every episode that is Embracer does says stupid shit? Clearly.
Right.
I don't think we can get away from this company, it seems like.
Well, they have good headlines recently, so
Right.
appreciate it.
Well, let's lay off all these people and then say, we're not going to lay off any more, but by the way, we're using AI.
Right, but not to replace people. Never mind, we just laid everybody off, so we're not going to replace people with AI because we don't have anybody left to replace. I like their logic.
Who's here? No one's here.
No one's here. See,
No one's here to use
the
the AI. Who's managing the AI?
And we're doing it for the employees, for the employees with disabilities. We're doing it for them.
Yes. To make it easier for the employees to do their job.
Right.
Sure.
Aren't we generous?
Yep.
Okay, next up, Tomb Raider's Lara Croft is the newest survivor joining the Dead by Daylight roster. In a press release, Behavior Interactive confirmed that beginning July 16, those who wish to play as Lara Croft can now do so via the time-limited public test build available on Steam. With her experiences and skill set, Lara Croft perfectly embodies the characteristics needed to survive in the fog and is right at home in the world of Dead by Daylight alongside other iconic characters, Behavior Interactive wrote. Though she may be well prepared for the trials ahead, in the entity's twisted world, the future is never promised.
Are these her skill set?
Her testicles?
Yeah, her testicles.
Testicles.
They could be used as a weapon, right?
I guess they could. If the killer's like right next to you, she turns really quickly and knocks him out. Do I like this? Sure. I think Dead by Daylight has become one of the more storied franchises to use all these different IPs and whatnot, but they're all horror based. So throwing Lara Croft in there, kind of like, I'm a little bit confused because typically you have a survivor and a killer. I don't know who Lara Croft's villain is.
The butler from
That's
the
a good
freezer
point.
has come back for revenge.
There you go.
And he's all like covered in ice. And he's got an ice pick.
He's just slowly going.
Yeah. One of those, he moves slowly, but you can never get away from him.
Right.
And I thought it was just going to be Angelina Jolie's bad acting. It was going to be.
That's the killer right there.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, though, this was not the scenario with Lara Croft and hooks I was going for.
There is a dungeon and hooks.
But it could be. It could be.
Hey,
It could be.
I have an amazing imagination. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that when all of these games do crossover IPs, they seem to wait until the IP's very height of relevance and popularity.
Right.
Like, Tomb Raider has not been a thing really for several years. It's kind of, even though the reboot trilogy was great, it's kind of faded into the background. Everybody's played it, beat it, whatever, and they've moved on. It's kind of, I had a similar thought when Fortnite announced their crossover that they're doing with Pirates of the Caribbean. When was the last time anybody gave a damn about Pirates of the Caribbean? Do you think kids are looking at that and going, I want to play as Jack Sparrow?
This is a tale of Captain Jack Sparrow. I don't think anybody really is doing that, but I think they're trying to come out with another, like a 5th movie. So it is within that relevance, but you're right. Like Tomb Raider, where have you been? Like no movies, no recent games or anything like that.
They did come out with a 5th movie. So
no, I'm talking about for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, they did come out with a 5th movie.
Straight to DVD.
No, I was in theaters. I saw it.
No. I'm talking about, I think, a 6th movie.
Okay, then they're trying to make a 6th movie that, I guess, but trying to is different than we have a script, we have a cast, it's shooting,
yes.
it's ready to release.
100%.
So, yeah. Killjoy says, I would definitely play as Jack Sparrow in Warzone. I'm not sure how that would work.
I'm expecting to see it there. But on a side note, I would love to see a G.I. Joe mashup with Warzone. It's about freaking time. Please, if all these other damn IPs like Walking Dead, screw that. Give me G.I. Joe. That's it. I'm done.
That's all he wants?
That's all I want.
Play as Cobra Commander the entire time and get on.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd wear my Cobra Commander helmet.
I used to be a man.
You should stream that.
Yes,
I will.
Please.
Yes.
Yep.
Please.
All right. Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC has fallen to a mixed Steam rating as PC players complain about the DLC's brutal difficulty. And From Software has responded by releasing a patch designed to make the game easier. FromSoft's Soulsborne games are notoriously difficult to beat, but creator Hidetaki Miyazaki recently said it would break the game itself to turn down the challenge. If we really wanted the whole world to play the game, we would just crank the difficulty down more and more. But that wasn't the right approach, he said. Turning down difficulty would strip the game of its joy, which in my eyes would break the game itself.
And yet you just did that.
Yeah, I think this is hilarious because the loudest voices often represent a group, but I'm still going to say that Soulsborne fans can be some of the smuggest gamers out there because they have played a difficult game, they have persevered, they have done it, and if you don't play it like they do, if you can't do it, if you're not good enough, then they completely look down on you. And Soulsborne's fans, even if you don't do that yourself, you know that that's what the group does. That is exactly how the group portrays itself. So to hear when the DLC came out and the complaints coming out of it's too hard, it just made me laugh and laugh and laugh. Of course, FromSoft is going to give you just a ball-breakingly hard DLC because that's what you want, that's what you love, that's what you keep asking for. How are they to know that there was a line where people didn't want it? It seems arbitrary to me, but whatever. It's like in Hollow Knight. The game itself is hard, but the pantheons in the post-game are super, super, super fucking hard.
Yes, they are.
You don't have to do them, though, but they are there specifically for the people who wanted a challenge that is almost impossible. This is the same kind of deal, but apparently they like it until they don't.
It's the same line from Airplane. They knew what they were getting into. They bought their tickets. I say, let them crash.
Yeah.
I don't think the developers should have acquiesced to the demands. I think they should have just said, hey, you know what? You guys know what these games entail. Get good, scrub. If you want this achievement, if you want to be at the top tier elite that says, hey, I beat this DLC and it was a really tough thing to do, then play the damn game exactly how it's meant to be. I'm sick and tired of people like, I want to play this game, but I just want the AI to do it. I want to sit back and let the AI do it for me so I can just watch it. Yeah, I completed it. Mom, give me some more Doritos. You know what? Take the challenge. Take it upon yourself to do something different.
I'll say this. As far as the developers are concerned, if the developers don't want to make a easier version of the game, then maybe the game isn't for you.
Yep.
If you're not going to have fun playing it, you don't need to change the game in order to make it more enjoyable for you.
But these are the people who said, this game is for me, and it's too hard.
Yeah, you're right, because they would have had the game itself and have beaten the game, and now they're getting the DLC. So now it's like, okay, you're looking down at other people for not playing this game on that level, but now you have become the very thing that you hate, that you despise. Because now I want it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I haven't even finished Elden Ring. It's super difficult. I'm still learning and stumbling my way through it. I haven't gotten to the DLC. I am sure the DLC is just crawl in a corner and start sobbing difficult. I can't speak to it because I haven't even gotten that far. But like I said, it's just entertaining to me that this was the result.
And you two want me to play a bunch of these games. Thank you so much.
You volunteered.
You said it.
Yeah.
It wasn't us. You said it.
We did not prompt you. You said you were going to do it.
You pushed me to that level. I blame you all.
If by pushed, I mean lightly placed our finger on you, then yes.
I will curse your name the entire time.
I curse you.
Main Ace Chase says, I put 150 hours into the base game. After watching people play the DLC, I think I'll just pass. I don't need something else to raise my blood pressure. So there you go. Know your limits. Nothing wrong with that. All right, and last up, a Polish developer has come under fire for expecting employees to agree to mandatory naked sauna sessions. In a now viral LinkedIn exchange, Spectrum Studio creative director Jacek Pirokowski approached narrative designer and writer Alexandra Wolna about working for his studio. Wolna replied that she had already declined the job as it required her to agree to mandatory naked sauna sessions. In the studio's game, the main character will be a sauna master and will be in charge of performing in various saunas, including smells, music, and choreography. Pirokowski said this mandate is not about getting naked, but rather experiencing different kinds of saunas. I don't want to waste my time to explain what's the difference between ruska banya or dry sauna. You have to feel it, he wrote.
So they're making a game about saunas, and they want somebody to go to mandatory naked saunas just to make the game more of an experience?
You have to feel it.
I also don't want to feel a 75-year-old man sitting there with his little chubby sweating all over me.
Do you want the realistic sauna experience or not?
If it's a Swedish sauna, then yes, I will do that. But not the Turkish kind. No, thank you.
Here's an idea. Just hear me out. Part of the requirements for a job would be familiar with these types of saunas. Right? You go into your interview, you say, yes, I've experienced a ruska banya. I've experienced a dry sauna. Tell me about it. What was that experience like? Great. Sounds like you really know your stuff. You're hired. Wouldn't that mitigate this need for naked saunas and embarrassment and HR problems? And
Yes.
Just throwing it out there.
My question is, because I am sure that on LinkedIn you have to post profile pictures, right?
You don't have to.
But probably most people do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if it's a coincidence who gets asked to apply for this job and who doesn't.
So her name is Alexandra Wolna. Okay, let's go to LinkedIn.
Gonna find this girl. All right.
And see, we're doing a little bit of research.
Main Ace Chase said, but the overlap between sauna masters and nerdy programmers is pretty slim. So you're right. You might need to have to throw down a little extra cash, or it could be a sauna class that you have to take on your own time before you call it.
Here's a stipend.
Onboarding.
Go experience the saunas. Come back, tell us, as opposed to let's go as like company bonding time. We're going to have our meetings in there and everybody's going to be naked.
I have found Alexandra Wolna on LinkedIn.
Oh.
And now I can say that I understand why the director wanted her to participate in naked sauna activities. So
I'm sure it had everything to do with her resume, right?
Absolutely. And now she's probably going to be like, why are you checking my LinkedIn profile? I have nothing to do with you. I'm like, all right, check.
Killjoy says 100%. I'll do it. Pay me.
It's going to be like that joke from the movie Euro Trip at the nude beach.
Yeah, Chica!
Because the only ones there are naked old men, and then the one chick shows up.
Performing in various saunas, including smells. You're performing smells. I just want to...
Performing in various... What? Smells, music, and choreography. Like, what are you doing in the sauna? That's the question. You're performing? What? Like, is it a interpreted dance?
When you go to the company naked sauna sessions, you'll learn what it means to perform in the sauna, including smells.
So basically, you're just the guy who has his dong out that everyone's trying not to make eye contact with. Is that your role?
I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile with Sauna Master as my title. So let's see how many jobs I get.
All of a sudden, you get a message from Spectrum Studio. How do you feel about moving to Poland?
All right, well, let's move on to our main topic.
From Metro, Reader's Future. Video games peaked in the Xbox 360 era, and it was all downhill from there. Nostalgia is, as they say, a hell of a drug. It hits everyone eventually and seems to destroy all sense of perspective and reason. Knowing all that, I have become fully convinced that the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were the pinnacle of gaming. Many people will say the last generation was great, and in many ways it was, but that was when the bloat and the live service games started. It also saw the number of new IP being released drastically decrease until you get to today, where there's virtually no new franchises being made, just endless sequels, reboots, and remakes. In my opinion, the Xbox 360 was the sweet spot where games looked good. We had proper online features, and games were cheap enough to make and buy that both gamers and publishers could afford to take chances now and again. Everybody wants great graphics, but it's like eating too much and not exercising. It tastes great at the time, but it's not sustainable, and it's going to do damage in the long run. Saying things were better in the old days sounds like such an old man thing, but in this case, I can't see how I'm wrong. Ideally, publishers would have realized the truth of it at the time and then cooled down the race to have better graphics, so they only gradually improved every generation, or maybe generations lasted much longer, so people were spending money on new games, not boring hardware. I'm sure there's 100 different ways they could have approached the problem, but instead they did nothing and pretended there was a problem. For once, the good old days really were better.
This has so much teenage angst in it.
How can it have so much teenage angst when this is exactly the kind of stuff that old men say?
What I'm saying is that it's just this amount of like, I don't want to sound like I'm old, but in a way I feel like today's, I guess it's not, maybe not teenage angst, but definitely there's like this sense of whine to this where it's
sense of whine,
shake your fist at a cloud kind of thing. But I don't know. To me, though, I think one of the biggest problems that you run into with an article like this, of course, it's an opinion piece, right? So immediately you're going to look at it from your point of view. And the writer from Metro obviously had a really good experience with that generation, right? Did everyone have a great experience with the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 generation?
Well, I think it's an interesting take because it makes a lot of good points and a lot of stuff that we have said ourselves.
Sure.
About, live service games, the bloat of the endless sequels, the reboots. Like, we don't need a remake of a game that was just out on PS4 and now you're remaking it on PS5. We don't need that. It's cash grab. Rah, 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 rah. And the fact that games back just a couple generations ago were affordable to make and to buy. So we had tons of different choices, lots of different genres that maybe aren't necessarily around anymore because they don't make enough money, because Xbox does things like close award-winning studios because they're not Blizzard-sized. There's a lot of good points here, even if the way it comes across is you're a whiner.
So what you're saying is you could have made all these points without adding any additional subjective commentary. I'm with you. I like that. And for me, I guess my thing is that it sounds like, based off of just the description, to use the term pinnacle of gaming, right? This idea, it makes it sound like everything was moving up, and then there was a cliff that dropped off. But I don't know if that's 100% the case. I don't know if the gaming has gotten considerably better every generation up until the Xbox 360 and PS3 and dropped off. I'll be honest with you, for me at least, from my personal experience, gaming has probably peaked and found its pinnacle more like in the 16-bit generation, for me, at least. That, to me, was the one era in which you were getting a lot of great classics coming out, things that people remember and that love. And but that's my subjective experience, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Where if you're looking at it from the point of view of when gaming was gaming, I think that's more what I think of when it comes to this particular article itself, right? Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. That's when gaming was still similar to all of the other experiences that we've had in the past when it comes to gaming itself. And then having to make that switch over. But the question is, what was the catalyst to all of this change? When PS4 came and Xbox One came and the Wii U, technically, came.
I wouldn't include that.
Well, not only that, but the online services and stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
If you look at the Xbox 360 and the PS3, it was free to play games online, whereas the Xbox 360 did require you to have an Xbox Live membership and stuff. That's the one thing I loved about the PS3. And then as soon as the PS4 came out and the Xbox One came out, everything was paid online. Like, you had to have an online subscription. Mm-hmm. Even Nintendo's doing it.
Which was a huge disappointment for me when the Switch came out and you had to pay for it. I got to pay for this stuff? Mm-hmm. No.
Like, I can play games online with my friends on the PC for free, so why would I pay for a subscription service just to do that?
Right.
Well, Microsoft was ahead of the times.
Yeah.
And then the 360 was so wildly successful that everybody else said, we can charge for that, and people will love it.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't wrong.
So, in a sense, I guess I agree with this article in a way that, yeah, right now all we're seeing are remakes, reissues, remasters. Not a lot of, well, no, we still see a lot of indie stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think from what the the AAA studios, they've done everything. So to create something new, and we have seen new stuff. We've covered it on the podcast, but every single new thing looks exactly like everything else that's out there. Everything now is so saturated and convoluted, you can't discern one IP from the next. Just like I made a comment last week about the RPGs, how there's just all the anime RPGs look exactly the same. I can't tell one from the other.
I think that the PS3 360 generation was kind of this magical sweet spot where developers had really learned how to do a lot with the graphics. Storytelling hit a really immersive place. There was a lot of AAA games that provided experiences that we hadn't had before. And so it was a time where every new game felt like this incredible experience because it was new and immersive, and it was really well done. Or maybe not everyone, but a lot of big hits, a lot of big franchises started on this generation.
Of course.
And since then, the problem is, yes, that games have become more and more expensive, that budgets are bloated, that studios can't take risks, but also that gamers are very jaded now. When new IP come out, because we always bemoan, we want new stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then you get the Forspokens and you get the Immortals of Avium, and nobody plays them, and they go down in flames. And then we wonder why we can't get new IP anymore. What do we want? We don't want the same thing we saw in this generation. So on the one hand, I'm not sure what studios are supposed to do to give us something new and fresh anymore. It's an interesting problem.
Everybody's playing it safe. And that's where we're losing out as an audience, as gamers ourselves, is that because of this safe play, nobody wants to go down the tubes. And the thing is, even them playing it safe, we hear about layoffs all the time from these studios, big name studios that are just laying people off left and right because they just can't seem to create a sustainable product. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people just have become less engaged. Rather than, like you said, Blue, them taking a risk themselves and playing a game like Immortals of Avium, they're willing to be a little bit less safe, but that also means that they're a lot less excited about what they're playing. So they're not going to spend as much. It's just like this catch-22, right? Mm-hmm.
I don't think that studios are all playing it safe. you've got a studio that just the one that just created the Chinese Room, Still Wakes the Deep. So far, that's a great game.
That's more of a smaller studio, correct?
I don't know the size of their studio or anything like that. Chinese Room seems like it's a smaller indie studio or whatnot. So we're seeing a lot better games come from these indie studios because I think they're the ones that are taking that risk. They want to be that great studio that people talk about with their games. And now the big people, the big top tier developing studios, they're just like, let's repackage this and call it something else and taking our money. So
yeah, but if that didn't work, though, they wouldn't do it.
It works up to a point, but like Ryan said, they're jaded because of all the stuff that keeps coming out that's rehashed and repackaged, and you expect us to give up our hard-earned money for something that we've played in this other game. I don't see that. Now, that being said, something like Still Wakes the Deep, yes, it's a first-person adventure game, but so far the story is good. I like it. I'm curious as to where it's going to go, and I really won't be able to give an intelligent review until it's all said and done.
Right.
But they're taking this risk, and I like it.
Well, what happens is you're an indie game studio, you take some risks, you become successful, you produce a few games, people like them, and then you just get bought out by Microsoft or PlayStation, right? And then your studio gets, divested, and all of the, kind of artistry that you have as part of the culture that created these games is gone because now you have oversight from Big Daddy Microsoft. And so then all of a sudden,
Big Zaddy.
the game Big Zaddy, right?
Big Zaddy.
All of a sudden, the games that you wanted to create are just not going to happen because they're going to be a risk. So I love this idea of this concept of kind of the indie renaissance that has been happening, but now you're also seeing what happens after the fact and all of those studios that get gobbled up left and right. And it becomes this like oligopoly, and that's not good for anybody in the marketplace long term.
Yeah, I think the more we discuss it, the more I think that this reader who sent in this opinion piece it may be pretty well on the mark, but I don't necessarily. It's not the console. It was that point in time.
I agree. I think that's a great concession to say.
Yeah, where the audience was in the right place to be receptive to this, to the different kinds of games, and there was a nice place of affordability and variety, and it was just the right time.
Do you think we'll see an instance of like an indie studio creating a mega smash hit game? A AAA studio comes in and says, "Hey, we want to buy you," and they're like, "Nope, no thanks. We like the way things are done here. We had this fear that if we do get swallowed up by you, then we're just going to get divested, split up, and that's it. So we're not going to go that route."
I would love to say that from an indie studio's point of view, they could say, "No, we won't sell out." But when somebody's handing you $1 billion, that's really hard to say no to.
Yeah.
I bet you it has already happened and we just don't hear about it because there's NDAs on these kinds of discussions and
of course
and that kind of stuff. But I can guarantee that there are those indie studios out there who are like, no, my creative freedom means more to me. And you know that if they're being approached by Microsoft or Sony, they've already had success.
Well, and the problem, though, that you run into with that is, isn't there a point in which Microsoft or Sony can boycott you from their platform and make it impossible for you to sell your games if you don't sell to them?
True, I guess, in a sense.
I mean, it'd be really shitty, but they could totally get away with that.
Of course.
You could, but take somebody like Punkel, who did Vampire Survivors. That was a mega hit on Steam first. And it was only years later where it eventually got ported to the other consoles. Switch was last. We don't know why, but eventually with a game like that, if it's not on your platform and it's on the others, people are going to want to know why.
Good point.
Yeah. Then I'm going to buy that system to play it instead of your system.
Or it was $5, buy it on Steam, whatever. Buy it all 3 places, wherever. But for the right games that can command that kind of audience, the power is in their hands more than I think most people give them credit for.
I think you nailed it, Blue. I got to be honest with you. I'm looking for a
All right, good enough then. Let's move on to our top 3 new releases.
All right, releasing this week is Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble for the Nintendo Switch. Join AI and friends. That's probably II, right?
Probably.
Aye,
Yeah.
aye, Captain.
And friends in Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, where you and up to 16 players can compete online across multi-game modes as you aim to become top banana. Rawr. You can also work together with your favorite bunch in 4-player cooperative mode or slip into a wonderful crafted story in the all-new adventure mode experience. Next up is Neo Spirit, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Switch, and PC. The exhilarating Atari racing classic Sprint returns. So that was Neo Sprint, not Neo Spirit. So Sprint returns. Neo Sprint zooms back into the life as single-screen arcade racer for up to 8 players, paired with a robust track builder and intuitive sharing tools, ensuring a racing experience that satisfied speed demons and architects alike. And last up, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD for the Nintendo Switch. The magical dark moon that hangs over Evershade Valley seems to claim the ghosts that live there. But when it suddenly breaks apart, the once friendly ghosts become unruly. Luigi must stumble into action and find his courage to restore the dark moon to its rightful place in the sky.
They calm the ghosts, not claim the ghosts.
Oh, there we go. That too. Well, sometimes listen here. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Hush, little baby.
Nothing but dreams now. Nothing but dreams. All right, so take a look at these 3 choices. Blue, what are you picking for this week?
Well, I've never played a Super Monkey Ball game, and as appealing as this description is, I am probably not going to go with this one. Neo Sprint. So watching the trailer, it looks like it could still be on an Atari. It's that top-down, like isometric racing stuff where the steering is dependent on the perspective of the car. So if you want to turn right, you can't just always press right. It depends on which way the car is facing. I hate that. I hate that with a passion. And I don't think I could play this for more than 5 minutes without being bored out of my mind. So I don't know how much it's going for, but not for me.
Blue is not pulling punches here today.
Nope.
And so that leaves Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which this was a game that I wanted to play on 3DS, missed out. Now it's going to come to the Switch. I fully intend on picking this up. I've heard that of the Luigi's Mansion trilogy, this is the weakest entry, but I still think it's going to be fun and still looking forward to it.
All right, Tony, what about you?
Like Blue, Super Monkey Ball. I think I played maybe a couple of minutes of it on the original PS1. Doesn't really, or PS1 or PS2, whichever one it was. Not appealing to me either. Luigi's Mansion 2, I did thoroughly enjoy the Luigi's Mansion release for the Nintendo Switch. I played that with my kids. We did that on stream. I liked the game, but that's not the one I'm picking this week. I'm picking Neo Sprint. Neo Sprint, in my personal opinion, doesn't look like it's Atari at all. It looks freaking amazing. It is the top-down isometric, and it looks like the bastard child of RC Pro-Am and Ivan Reitman's Super Off-Road thrown into one. So, and I've loved those games. I've dumped many a quarter into the Super Off-Road arcade cabinets and had a blast doing so. This looks fun, especially if it's up to 8 players, if you could play online with other people. Not so much into the track building itself, because like I've said before, I want to play the game. I don't want to sit there and design the game. So if I could play other people's tracks and play them with friends, then I think I'm going to pick this one up.
Nice.
What about you, Ryan?
So Neo Sprint is a definite no for me right off the bat. Even though I have no problem with utilizing those controls. I'm a huge fan of Rock and Roll Racing, which does have those controls, and I'm okay with it. But to your point, Blue, this is 10 minutes worth of fun, is what it looks like to me. And I'm sorry, Donnie, I know that it's what you picked this week, but it's just how I feel, man. Just how I feel.
You don't have to apologize to me. That's your opinion.
I apologize still. I was apologizing for apologizing.
Very Canadian of you.
So the next one is Super Monkey Ball. This actually, I think, could be a fun like party game. It sounds like that you could play with friends online. However, that means you have to convince people to also buy the game, which might be a hard sell.
Yeah.
So unless the Discord is like, "Hey, we're all buying Super Monkey Ball," I probably am not picking this one up. Which leads us to Luigi's Mansion 2. Blue, I agree, is definitely the weakest of the Luigi Mansion trilogy, but it's still a great game, and I'd love to see the new polish on it, and I'm buying another game that I already own for a system. And we just complained. Yes,
we did, and I said if it didn't work, they wouldn't keep re-releasing it, but they will.
They know me so well. So this week, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. There it is. It's the HD that makes it totally different, and so now it's a different experience
it's fine.
completely.
We're not hypocrites. It's fine.
Nope, whatsoever.
All right. Before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. The show explores the history of video games through the stories and experiences of the people who lived it. This week, Bill is dropping a State of the Show and AMA episode. This week's question is, the 90s and early 2000s were full of video game mascots. Who is your favorite video game mascot not named Mario, Sonic, or Pikachu? Let Bill know your answer by sending him a tweet at A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter. And Donnie consults his shelf, trying to think of one.
I'm going to go with Bubsy on this one. A lot of attitude.
Oh, what?
You're full of
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Bubsy's a terrible game. It just asked me what my favorite mascot was. And Bubsy's not bad as a mascot. He's got the tood, right? He's goofy. He's fun. I think that also, for the most part, people really crap on Bubsy without getting to know him first. So it's very much, how would I put it? It's an acquired taste. But once you acquire a taste for Bubsy, you'll never go back. So
Everybody else already did the homework on Bubsy, so not everybody needs to follow down the same path.
It's like a nice IPA. Right.
I really appreciate how hard you're working to sell this.
Yep.
We're not buying it, but we appreciate how hard you're working.
Thank you.
Did you think of one, Donnie?
I've got two, and
Okay.
one is specifically for the commercials. Back in the early 2000s, the PlayStation commercials with Crash Bandicoot as the mascot, a guy in a big Crash Bandicoot like costume and whatnot. Those were hilarious. I like those. But from a mascot overall, that's not one of the top most notoriables.
Notoriables? That is the word of the day.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Notoriables.
Notoriables. Donkey Kong to me is a classic icon as a mascot, not just from the video games, but from the cartoons, from the cereal boxes and everything like that we've got. To me, he's top tier. He's A-list. Mm-hmm. What about you, Blue?
You know, I think you could make a really good argument for Pac-Man, who is an icon, but I'm not going to say that's my favorite because, like, what is the difference between a video game mascot and just a video game character?
Right.
I think it's the tood.
The tood. If you grew up in the 90s, it's the tood. Because if you're going video game characters, there's so many, like, iconic Nintendo IP. You know, you can go Link, you can go Kirby, you can go
Even Yoshi.
You can go with characters like, if you're moving away from Nintendo, you can go like Mega Man. But I think I'm gonna go err on the side of representing a console or representing a brand as a whole beyond its own game, and I'm gonna go with Astrobot.
Okay, that's a relatively new one, right?
Yeah.
It was around since PS3. So, you know, the greatest generation.
Right. Oh,
A coincidence? I think not.
I think not.
I think not. Astrobot is super cute. Games are super fun. Sackboy was a close second, but I'm going to Astrobot.
I can't believe nobody went with James Pond.
I can.
Or Bonk.
Oh, that's a...
He's a baby with a big head. I mean, there's something fun about that. All right, thank you, students. Please take your seats, and welcome back to Professor Rybread's Nostalgia 101. And in today's lesson, we'll be talking about one of my favorite movies from the 1980s that dealt with cool cars, comeuppance for bullies, and trying desperately not to bone your own mom. I am, of course, talking about Back to the Future. So dial up your time circuits, prepare for things to get heavy, punch it to 88 miles an hour, because where we're going, we don't need roads. So before I jump in, you guys, I would imagine, seen this movie.
Never heard of it.
Yeah,
sure.
This is a new one. Some obscure, like, art house film, right?
Right.
Well, it's got that interesting incest plot, you know?
It's art.
So for me, at least, I have a lot of personal nostalgia for this movie, as it was one of those flicks that definitely ended up being well used in my VCR. And in fact, the stage show of Back to the Future at Universal Studios, Florida, as a kid, I was asked to come up on stage and play the lead character, Marty McFly. And apparently, from all accounts, the girl that was playing Jennifer was a really hot 20-something. But back then, I wasn't concerned with doing that. I was just concerned with doing Doc and Marty justice and being more useful than a screen door on a battleship. So what I think is neat about this film is that it kind of falls within my wheelhouse of this idea of nostalgia, right? What life was like for someone else. Now, in the particular case for Back to the Future, it's nostalgia that your parents got to experience and things that maybe you going back and looking at and saying, what if I got a chance to go back in time and see what it was like for my parents to grow up? You know, mix that up with a suspenseful and often comedic plot. I think you got a pretty good formula for that. And that's why I liked Back to the Future so much as a kid. So really begs the question then, is where did this movie come about? Well, the idea originated from a gentleman named Bob Gale in 1980 when he found his dad's old yearbook and wondered something simple. Would I be friends with my old man if we attended school together? So I'm going to pose that to Donnie in blue. Do you think that you would be friends with your dad if you went back in time and met him in high school?
I doubt it.
Maybe, but I don't really know what my dad was like back then.
Sure. No, and I get it. And one of the interesting parts is that often you don't really know who your parents were back then, right?
Right.
You don't know how they came to be. I know my dad was like a really popular guy in high school, so I probably would have hated him. But nonetheless, I think it's just an interesting concept, right? And, you know, what Gale did is he approached his friend, who we are probably very familiar with, director and writer Robert Zemeckis. Good guy to have who's a friend around. And pitched the idea to him and said, hey, I'm interested in creating something around this concept. And the two of them decided, you know what, let's do a screenplay together. And admittedly, though, the first draft was a bit rough, including elements of a nuclear explosion at the climax of the film, and that the time machine was going to be a refrigerator. Great Scott!
Get in the fridge, Marty!
So after several revisions, the script was pitched to over 40 different studios, many commenting that it was too sweet and not raunchy enough when compared to other teen movies at the time. But Universal would eventually pick it up after the blessing of the great Steven Spielberg, who knew Gale and Zemeckis and vouched for them. So it finally came time to cast the film, and this is where things got a little interesting. So Marty McFly, who's the main character of the movie and gets thrust back into time to when his father George was his age, was originally set for Michael J. Fox to play the role. But due to his tight schedule with filming his show Family Ties, He just wasn't available. So therefore, Eric Stoltz was brought in to play the role of Marty. Now, Stoltz, while being a great actor himself, just kind of wasn't the right fit for the role. And a deal was struck eventually to replace him. And that basically led to them going out, seeking out Michael J. Fox again and saying, how do we get him on this film? And the folks at Family Ties said, as long as it doesn't interfere with his schedule and his ability to act, we don't care what you do with his time. So Michael J. Fox got finally cast as Marty McFly, and unfortunately that meant he didn't get to sleep a lot. Now, in regards to Eric Stoltz, though, I mean, there's actually still film available out on YouTube and other platforms where you can watch some of the scenes he filmed and kind of see the differences. And one of the things you'll notice is with Stoltz, he took the role a bit too seriously. Which, honestly, if you look at the film itself and how it turned out, that's not the feeling from it. It's mostly comedic. It's mostly kind of lighthearted for the most part. So him taking it more seriously just wasn't a great fit for it. Now, subsequently, Michael J. Fox and crew actually had to shift their entire production schedule around to accommodate the change because they had already filmed so much of the movie with Stoltz in it.
Ouch.
Yeah. So
can you imagine getting booted from that movie and then going and watching it later and it's a mega hit?
Right. It's probably one of the best movies of 1985. You know, it's
one of the best movies ever.
Oh, of course, right? And it skyrocketed Michael J. Fox's career into doing.
Yeah, he's like Family Ties. What?
Right. Exactly.
Right. Which, if it's weird to think about, that he and Leah Thompson were in Back to the Future, he was scrapped, but then Eric Stoltz and Leah Thompson also starred in a movie called Some Kind of Wonderful, like many years later, and that was kind of a hit too. So. And I think that was a little bit, somewhat comedic chops for Eric Stoltz, but you're right. And some of the footage and stuff like that for Back to the Future that he was in, it was just like, I felt nothing.
Right. There was no emotional connection to it.
Mm-mm. There's a difference between being serious and being earnest.
Good point.
Like Ernest P. Worrell?
Yes.
Ernest goes to jail?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Good old Jim Varney. All right, so now, how can I not talk about the most iconic part of the film, the DeLorean, a.k.a. the Time Machine. I think this is a really interesting choice by Galen Zemeckis, who actually included the car as part of the script. And I think it was a really smart choice. You know, it's a strange-looking car. It's sleek, yet a little boxy. It's got those wing doors. It's covered in stainless steel. It's
very 80s.
1980s. I was just about to say it screams 1980s. And the car itself was actually created by John DeLorean as a desire to make his own motor company, but wouldn't get very far and eventually got arrested for dealing cocaine. So even
also
more
very
80s, right? So needless to say, the Time Machine, it had some personality to it. I mean, it was really a part of the entire movie. The last thing I'll cover here really is the soundtrack. The music, in my personal opinion, is one of the best to come out in the 80s and maybe ever, right? It's something where you recognize it instantly. Think about certain movies like Indiana Jones and Star Wars, where, you know, John Williams makes this massive score, and as soon as you hear just a few notes, you know what it is. Well, Alan Silvestri did the same thing for Back to the Future. Also to appear on the soundtrack were two songs by the hit band Huey Lewis and the News for their songs Power of Love and Back in Time. And Huey Lewis himself even appeared in the film as a school administrator to let Marty know and his band, the Pinheads, that they were, quote, and Donnie, do you know this one?
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
Just too darn loud for the Battle of the Bands, that's right. Which is super ironic and also hugely comedic if you actually know it was Huey Lewis. So, the film itself released on July 3rd, 1985, and was a smash success at the box office, grossing over $380 million worldwide, and it was the highest grossing film of that year. Its success would spawn 2 additional movies and eventually even a children's cartoon. So, I personally love this movie. Yes, you remember that cartoon?
I remember. I had forgotten until just this moment.
Yep, and they had live action sequences with Christopher Lloyd, but the voice, if memory serves me right, the voice of Doc Brown was actually the guy who does Homer from The Simpsons.
Dan Castellaneta.
Yeah, yep. So we got to go back and watch that one.
I wonder if it holds up.
Definitely not. So to wrap things up, Back to the Future, I think was a perfect blend of comedy, romance, adventure, and science fiction, and had a lasting legacy on the filmmaking industry. Just wanted to say thank you all for attending today's Nostalgia 101. And just a reminder, if you have any ideas for a story or topic you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. We might feature your suggestion.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Thank you all for listening to episode 123 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, Love Retro BTW, and A Gamer Looks at 40 Podcast for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Watch us right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/GamersWeekPodcast, where we will record live every Wednesday at 8:30 Central Time. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com, or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. And last but not least, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And just a quick reminder, no new episode next week, but we hope you enjoy your Independence Day holiday. Finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
Did Marty McFly going back in time cause all this bullshit gaming stuff happening today?
Oh my God, it's an alternative 2024. Right. It's all his fault. You're right.
Oh,
if they would have given
boxes.
us Back to the Future 4, that would have been the plot. Marty McFly ruins gaming. He's running around with his NES and it's disappearing.
Oh, God, don't even put that out there, because somebody will be like, you know what? I think we have a great idea for Back to the Future 4.
You think there's not already a script floating around for Back to the Future 4 that some boneheaded producer is desperately trying to get made?
Absolutely. But they said that as long as, I think it was either Bob Gale or Robert Zemeckis or whichever one's still alive, he said that as long as I'm living, there will never be another Back to the Future movie. And I think after they die, then people are not going to, it's going to be too long. People are like, Back to the Future, what's that?
Which is the perfect time to remake it.
Exactly.
No.
You know what they should remake is all the NES games.
Yes, because those suck balls.
Those are so bad. They're terrible.
Yeah.
They are the worst. They are like, I think they're LGN. All right, I think they are LJN.
They are.
Yeah, LJN, they are.
Yeah, and it's like Back to the Future and then Back to the Future 2 and 3 combined, right?
Right, because there wasn't enough concept to make two separate games.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Oh, LJN.
Well, on that note, have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night. Don't let the LJN bite.
Ah.
You like that?
I did like that.
I used to be a man.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD STDs things, right? Make you fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
That was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.